So some new Tyron Woodley sparring footage leaked ahead of his fight with Jake Paul, and this all begs the question, does this footage give us any new insight into Woodley's potential boxing style? How are Woodley's boxing fundamentals looking these days, and is he still keeping some of his bad MMA striking tendencies that have plagued him in the past? Well, let's get right into this and find out. Real quick, this is Kiwi MMA, and if you're new here and enjoy combat sports breakdowns, especially on more unconventional fighters and matchups like YouTube boxers, then please subscribe to the channel below. And feel free to check out my other videos on Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley below if you want to learn more about this exciting boxing matchup. And without further ado, let's get into this. So just a little background info before we start. This is a light warm-up sparring session between Woodley and up-and-coming Cuban pro boxer Anthony Martinez. Both him and Woodley are trained under coach Pedro Diaz of Mundo Boxing. Now, Mundo Boxing is a highly respected boxing camp known for legendary fighters such as Miguel Cotto and Guillermo Rigondeaux. Now, Anthony Martinez is an up-and-coming Mundo boxer who competes at the cruiserweight division, and he's currently the WBO Latin Cruiser champion and has multiple knockouts on his resume. So Martinez is a legit sparring partner for Woodley, with a long frame and a 78-inch reach, a whole 2 inches longer than Jake Paul. Now, we know this is a warm-up session because Coach Diaz posted a picture of the three with the caption, 10 rounds completed, so this was just a bit of light work before getting into the real hard sparring. Now, unfortunately, we don't get to see the hard sparring session, but there's still a lot to glean technically from this footage, so let's jump right into this. So the session starts off with Woodley back in the corner of the ring, and he dips down towards his left. Now, this is just a warm-up, but Tyron's pretty exposed here, and maybe he's trying to bait out a reaction from Martinez. Martinez instead just backs away slightly. Now Tyron dips back up and immediately puts up his right high guard, maybe anticipating a jab or a left hook from Martinez, but again, Martinez doesn't throw. Now Woodley's back in a more conventional stance, and Martinez throws a jab, which Woodley slips to the inside of. Now, one problem for Woodley in this sequence is when you slip to the inside against an orthodox opponent's jab, you do risk lining yourself up for the right hand. Right, look at Woodley here. He slipped the jab, but Martinez, especially with that 78-inch reach, could still line him up here for the right cross. However, Woodley took a more exaggerated slip and bent his body farther out to get more out of range of Martinez's shot, whereas if he slipped more tightly and stayed in the pocket, Martinez could have definitely lined him up for it. But since Woodley continued to dip to his left more, Martinez would have had to reach with his cross to land the shot. So Woodley dips back up and they reset. Now here Martinez throws another jab, and this time Woodley opts to pull back on it against the ropes. But Martinez comes with a follow-up cross down the middle, and here we see Woodley with some good distance management. So Woodley slips back into the ropes just enough for the shot to miss while keeping his right hand up just in case he needs to parry. And this is good distance management and head movement from Woodley, and it's something that his partner Ben Askren, for example, really lacked when he fought Jake. Unlike Askren, Woodley is much more used to reacting to shots in the pocket, and he knows how to make the subtle head movements necessary to evade the shot and then stay out of danger. So after slipping the shot, Woodley dips his head back to the left and walks forward. Now, they're clearly just working some movements here because Martinez could have easily caught Woodley with a jab here if he wanted. But Woodley turns into Martinez and they come together trying to mimic what looks like a shoulder bump sequence, which is basically used at a close range to create space. So after the shoulder bump, Woodley moves back to a farther distance and we get to see some of his boxing tendencies at a further range. So Woodley's again got his right hand out to parry and he's letting Martinez lead the dance here. Martinez steps forward with a right hand, but Woodley's out of the shot so we don't get to see what happened. Martinez steps forward with a long jab this time. Now, despite the fact that Woodley had his right hand up to parry and ready to go, he kind of just leaves it out there and opts instead to slip back on the jab while also stepping backwards. Now, he's able to avoid it, but there's two really interesting things about this sequence. The first is that Martinez, of course having that long reach, is able to get his jab really close to Woodley's face. Now, this could just be Woodley's good distance management here, again, knowing exactly how far back he needs to be to evade the shot, and you know Martinez has a huge reach advantage, but still, that was a bit alarming to see him get that close to Woodley's face at such a far distance. But the other thing at play here was Woodley didn't try to parry the jab, even though he had his right hand up the entire time. If he could have just blocked the jab slightly with the right hand, intercepted it, and pushed it off to the side, Martinez's jab would have never come as close as it did. Right, he should have either caught it in the mid-range or pushed it away at the last second here. And then besides not parrying the jab, the other thing people might point to is how Woodley's left hand completely drops here after slipping the punch, which leaves a huge opening down the middle right through his guard. Again, if he blocked or parried Martinez's right hand first, the opening wouldn't really matter, but since he didn't parry and opted to slip his head back, we can clearly see the gaping hole in his defense. And let's say Martinez instead threw a 1-2 here. Right, similar to how you can, say, trick a pull counter artist by throwing a 1-2 down the middle. Right, because the pull counter artist is expecting you to just throw a jab so they can slip up it and throw their right hand, but if you throw a 1-2, then that's another punch they didn't expect, so you can throw that 1-2 and land it right down the middle when they slip. So similarly, if Woodley slips back on that jab but doesn't anticipate a 1-2, then Martinez, with that long reach and right hand extending further than the jab, could have easily landed that. Some people might have said Woodley should have used a closed high guard here while backing up just in case. I mean, you can do that, but it tends to be a bit energy draining. But the big thing Woodley could have done here is simply keep his left hand slightly up and free in order to parry if an incoming right hand did come down the middle. So similar to like Roy Jones, for example, who was a master of the parry, he parries the jab with the right hand, and then he keeps his left hand slightly up and free in case he needs to parry the follow-up cross or wants to counter with, say, a parry jab or a parry left hook. But ideally, Woodley would have done that after parrying the initial jab with his right hand. So, I mean, you can get away with having your hands fairly low in boxing. It's not like you have to keep a high guard 24/7. I mean, like this footage of Roy Jones shows, I mean, granted, he was a bit more unconventional, but the same opening is on Roy Jones as is on Woodley. The only difference is he was smart enough to use his parry to negate that opening. So, I mean, I don't think this is the most egregious thing defensively from Woodley. It's definitely an opening and it's still there, but it's just something he needs to be aware of. And in the case of this scenario, parrying the initial jab would have been the way to mitigate that opening. And then we get to the final exchange where, again, they're both just moving here in order to get their rhythm going, but Woodley starts to dip his head down and to his left off the center line in order to evade Martinez's right hand. He then throws his own right hand down the middle that hits Martinez's lat muscle. Now this is also good to see from Woodley because, again, I spoke about how in the Gilbert Burns fight he got caught throwing the right cross against Burns down the middle naked with no head movement, whereas Burns dipped his head off the center line to his left while throwing the right overhand and caught Woodley badly. But here Woodley's doing the opposite and he's trying to set up his right hand in a much more defensively sound way. Again, throwing your power hand while getting your head off the center line is one of the best ways to carry out your offense while at the same time being defensively responsible. And as I said, Jake does at times throw out his right hand recklessly, and if Jake can have an exchange like this in the pocket where typically Woodley has a speed and power advantage, well that could be lights out for Jake. And lastly, after throwing the right hand, Woodley dips out on the opposite side he threw the punch and slides right back in front of Martinez. And just before the session ends, Tyron feints to the body of Martinez. And this is a good thing to see from Woodley because usually Jake is the one doing the feinting. Right? Against Ben Askren, against Nate Robinson, against Gibb, and usually he's pretty successful with this. And the only fighter that tried to feint much on Jake was Deji of all people, and he actually had some success with it. And especially given the fact that Woodley has had a lot of success with feinting in MMA, especially to set up the right hand, he should definitely keep these feints going. At the very least to keep Jake honest, and at the best to keep him constantly on edge. Because of course Jake is going to be conscious of Tyron's right hand the entire fight, but if Woodley can feint more and keep Jake on edge, maybe even feint the right hand that Jake knows is coming, eventually it's going to open up opportunities for some of Woodley's other punches or set up Woodley's right hand even more. You know, make Jake the one who's more tense, afraid, and unsure of what's coming, not the other way around. And Tyron did have this to say about his feints in the press conference.
Everything I do, everything I throw is going to hurt. My feints are going to hurt. It's going to make his body shake to the point where he don't know what the fuck's going on.
So yeah, hopefully that's something he implements. And that's all the footage we really have to talk about, and what can we really say about it? Honestly, Tyron doesn't look bad at all in my opinion. The movement looks solid, his distance control, his slipping ability, everything looks like it's headed in the right direction. You know, that opening down the middle is a little alarming, especially since it's less than 2 weeks away from the fight, but even that is something his team can still likely correct. I like that he's getting his head more off the center line, I like that he looks like he's trying to develop an effective counter right hand, and most importantly, I like that he's sparring with a long and dangerous cruiserweight boxer who can give him a good look for Jake Paul. Ultimately, Tyron is a smart fighter with a good team behind him it looks like, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how he will look come fight night. Anyways guys, that's the breakdown, and thank you guys so much for watching. And let me know what you guys think about this sparring session. Is Woodley looking good, or are you guys getting kind of worried? Once again, make sure to check out my Jake Paul sparring session breakdown if you want a little comparison between him and Woodley, and definitely check out my Tyron Woodley boxing breakdown if you want more information on this matchup. And again, this is Kiwi MMA, over and out.